Welcome to the Maverick Banking Edge podcast series, episode 5. On today's episode, we are discussing the state of the CX industry, and to join this conversation we have Asuthosh Karandikar and Annette Franz, and they are hosted by P. Venkatesh, Director, Thought Leadership, Maverick Systems.
Welcome to the Maverick Banking Edge podcast on customer experience. I have with me today Annette Franz, the industry leader, the writer, blogger, as well as practitioner who has spearheaded and also set up industry bodies for customer experience and who has been in the forefront of that for the last 2 decades and more. Welcome to the show, Annette. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I also have Asuthosh, who for about a decade did various things, and in the last decade and more had exclusively focused on customer experience and performed various roles from being a product manager to actual implementation of platforms, including doing consulting on evaluation of the customer experience platforms. Welcome on board, Asuthosh. Good to have you with us in this session.
Thank you for having me, PV, and a pleasure talking to both of you.
Welcome. Now, Annette, customer experience has been in the forefront for the last 2 decades or more. And banking and telecom are the two critical verticals who make substantial investments and for whom this is extremely critical. Given that context, why is it that we are releasing a report on CX for financial services now?
Yeah, I think you make a great point. You know that banking and telecom are two industries where huge investments in customer experience are absolutely needed, and this report is really going to guide the banking industry to understand customers, to design and deliver a better experience for their customers. And I think right now it's really critical because the financial landscape is really evolving, and banks really need help keeping up with that. And the banking industry is evolving, right? Not only are we seeing, digital banks and non-banking organizations coming into this industry, but also some of the consolidation that's happened over the last year and some of the issues with the smaller banks and those kinds of things. So I think it's really important that as the industry evolves, the really true differentiator and competitive advantage that banks have is that customer experience. Customer needs with regards to banking and banking services are evolving too. So we've got an evolving landscape, we've got an evolving industry, we've got an evolving customers and customer needs. And again, banks need help, keeping up with that. So the importance of customer experience in the banking industry really can't be overstated. They need help with the latest trends, the latest best practices, and the best ways to successfully implement and execute their customer experience transformation initiatives. And that's exactly what this report has set out to do.
Are you essentially saying, Annette, that while customer experience has been on the mind frame of the banking CXOs, for the first time it has been collated and present to them, the regional as well as various practices within the segments of banking for them to have a look at it? Here is a playbook available.
Yes,
of
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Now, Asuthosh, if I were to ask you, are there uniform practice across geographies and across subsegments of banking? And what, in your view, would be the highlights in terms of what has worked and why has it worked, and what people can take away from this?
No, wonderful question, PV. I mean, if you ask me what's on the top of my wish list for CX transformation, it would be uniformity. It would be so easy if if there's one trend, one insight, one solution that could work across the sector, across the markets, that would be such a wonderful thing to have. Unfortunately, world isn't that simple. And which is why, if you look at our report, we have deliberately put together insights in specific hierarchy or category, if you will. We have a triad of market, sector, and technology trends and insights that we have very carefully, meticulously filtered through and added into the report. In fact, even within the market, we found that there are 4 distinct influences which do impact how CX is implemented and drives results. So within market, we have also covered the political regulatory aspects of the industry. We have given economic aspects in terms of how the economy is shaping up in the post-COVID, post-conflict world, and therefore what is needed in CX to drive success. We have covered the social dynamics, the increasing presence of Gen Z and millennials in the consumer mix and how it is shaping up the consumer expectations. In fact, within the political regulatory environment as well, we have covered just so many acts that have come up in the last 2-3 years, trying to reshape how the environment works in a secure, transparent way to fix things up that were happening in the industry, whether it is Dodd-Frank, Wall Street reforms and Consumer Protection Act, or European Funds and Asset Management Association, or FCPB, FCA. There's just so many regulatory bodies which in some way or the other control and regulate how systems are implemented, unlike any other sector where there's not as much close eye on implementations. Here, you have to be far more careful about compliances. So we have covered that very meticulously in the report. And last piece is, of course, technology, which we have segregated into technologies and platforms. And the reason we have done this, to respond to your specific question, PV, is we recognize that there are market-specific, sector-specific nuances that need to be factored in before you start working on a very right fit solution, so to say. So unfortunately, there is no one right answer. But having said that, if I may, we have also highlighted certain commonalities across the markets and sectors. For example, the need for transparency and trust, the need for sustainability and impact-based investments, the need for customer centricity, hyper-personalization, a journey and touchpoint specific intervention, and so on, which we have called out. So any leader from the industry who's looking at the report would not only understand how their market, their sector needs to be differentiated, but at the same time can get a lot of best practice insights or baseline insights across the space to make it count.
See, very nice, Ashutosh. And I was just wondering, when people talk about customer experience, the regulatory doesn't become one of the factors. It's all about customers. But what you're intending to say is that in the last few years, the regulations around data privacy, security have actually come into the front stage, and therefore it is important that you factor that in while designing your customer experience journey. Very good, very good. Now, Hannah, if you were to tell people that these are the opportunities and what are the challenges that they may face and how could they overcome, it would be wonderful for them to actually execute from whatever learning that they could have from the report.
Yeah, where to begin? Opportunities and challenges. How much time do we have? Oh goodness. Well, let's start with. I want to start with the challenges, or do you want me to start with the opportunities? Do you have a preference there?
It will be good to start with opportunities and then move to challenges.
All right. So I mean, I mentioned earlier that one of the opportunities, obviously, if we do this work, you're going to have this great competitive advantage, right? Not everybody's doing it, and not everybody's doing it to the degree that we think that we can help with. You do with this report, right? So, I think that's a big piece of it. The opportunities lie there in terms of really understanding your customers and taking what you learn from this report and using that to do exactly that, right? Understanding your customers, understanding their expectations, because ultimately, that's what the experience is all about. It's about the customer's expectations and how you perform against those. I think so. That's a real opportunity there, and I think also, Ashutosh mentioned it, the technology, and making sure that as you're doing this work, that you have the right data and the right technology in place, and those present opportunities because that technology is obviously helping to facilitate the experience that customers are expecting, right? And so I think it's really important that we focus on that, the competitive advantage, the opportunity to understand your customers, the opportunity to get the right technology in place so that you can use that data and deliver the right experience at the right time for your customers. In terms of challenges, I think I want to talk about three different things, right? The first one is the culture, right? The culture is the foundation of the organization. It's the foundation of the work that lies ahead. It's how we do things around here. And if you don't have that right culture in place, it's going to make things a lot more challenging, right? So I'm specifically, obviously, talking about a customer-centric culture. And so I think that's really important. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of folks, a lot of companies, because they don't already have that in place. And without that in place, the work becomes harder. So that's probably where you want to begin. The second part, which is really closely tied to that, is your leadership team, your executives. They've got to be committed to the customer. They've got to be the ones to say, hey, we're going to put the customer at the heart of everything that we do. And if they don't do that across the board, so the entire executive team across the board has to be aligned and in, right? They've got to all be involved and be a part of this. Then it's going to be challenging to get any work done. And all the great things that we're talking about and advising and telling you about in this report will be all for naught because you don't have the executive commitment to do the work. And then I think the third one is, and it's also directly tied to that, is I think a lot of companies, a lot of folks think that this is a big investment and it's a lot of work and why should we do that? And I think the flip side of that, or to overcome that, what we really have to say is it's not a big investment and it's not a lot of work because it's your business, right? And why are you in business? You're in business for your customers and because of your customers. And so why wouldn't you want to understand them, get to know them, design an experience that they expect so that they'll be satisfied and tell their friends and come back and lather, rinse, and repeat. So this is a really important thing to think about, and not think of it as a challenge, but think of it as we are going to make investments in improving our processes and our products and our services and everything anyway. So why not insert the customer into the center of all that and not make any decisions or do anything without putting the customer's best interest at heart? So I hope that answered the question. So a couple of opportunities, a couple of challenges, but the challenges are not overcomable. There's obviously things we can do to overcome those executive commitment and alignment issues. A lot of times what I advise is that we've obviously got to appeal to the left and the right side of the brain of our executives, right? The number side and the emotional side. And a lot of that can be done through, data and quick wins and building the business case on one side, and then on the other side, bringing in those customer stories and telling customer stories and doing the journey mapping and having your executives sit in on those sessions with customers so that they can actually hear what they're putting their customers through and why the experience needs to be the focus of the organization, why we need to invest in a better experience for our customers. So hopefully that answered your question. I know, like I said, how much time do we have? We could talk about that for days for sure.
I get that, Annette. But essentially you're saying it is not technology or investment which is a bigger challenge. It is the attitude, the commitment, and instituting the right culture for making this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the foundation. You're absolutely right.
Thanks, Annette. Now, Asutosh, there have been a number of new technologies which have emerged, and you also see number of platforms. We never had a customer experience platform before. Now we do. And there is a common data platform. So if you were to pick the stack, what would those components be and how these new technologies are helping? And Annette was saying investment is not a problem. And have people seen return on investment on customer experience would be good to touch upon, Asutosh.
So absolutely, can't agree more with Annette that thankfully today access to technology isn't a challenge. In fact, anyone with the right investment appetite can invest. But it also means that in terms of competition, your competitor is as invested as you are in technology, and therefore technology is no more a differentiator in itself. The differentiation comes in, as rightfully said by Annette, from the culture you build and the approach you have to implementation. For what purpose you implement, with what rigor you implement, how embedded it is in your culture, how recurringly and regularly you update and transform. I think all these are the aspects which will help you compete in a differentiated manner. Technology in itself wouldn't. In fact, we have a very interesting story in our ancient scriptures, which is about this huge, a very successful warrior who's asked, which is your favorite weapon? His favorite weapon is mace. Everyone feels that it's mace, and he's going to respond that my favorite weapon is mace. And he says, interestingly, that it's whatever comes to my hand at that point of time, because ultimately, and the reason I cited this is it so easily applies to how technology is leveraged today, that it's not about which technology you have, but which technology can come to use for a specific use case and a problem that you have at this point of time, right? So to cut a long story short, our report does delve into a detailed breakdown of all the technologies and platforms that are available today. As you rightly said, PV, there's a plethora of platforms, including the new age ones like the CXM, which no more is a new age platform. Now there is the newer one is the journey orchestration platform, which is doubling down on the CXM implementation with a far more deeper journey mapping and orchestration of sorts. How do we activate a journey across the touch points and have personalized experiences going in? But before that, if I may say, we have also additionally given specific use cases by brand. For example, how HSBC has implemented a very, very sound digital onboarding platform for its corporate customers, how Barclays has implemented a completely integrated ecosystem of sorts, which combines treasury, cash management, fund management rolled into one, which is like single access, multi-use option for its users. We have talked about how Bank of America has a very sound cybersecurity solution in place. JP Morgan, how it is using AI/ML technologies to give a predictive insight on how cash could be managed better for its corporate accounts based on the cash flow that it could see within the transactions, and so on and so forth, right? So for each brand, you would see that given their need, their market focus, their portfolio focus, they have leveraged all the very same technologies differently and for different reasons. If I were to pick up a common stack as such, beyond the norm, typically organizations would want to use a sound CRM system to manage and track relationships and engagements, a decent CMS which could offer a personalized marketing presence, or a landing page, a soft selling point of sorts, a good a CDP or a customer 360 analytics solution which aggregates data across its sources and gets a single view of the customer. If you could have a CXM platform which could help you continuously listen to the insights across the channels, double down on the insights and propagate them into the respective functions very fast, and possibly trigger actions. For example, if the NPS shows a gap in a particular journey or a touch point, it immediately raises alert to a particular team and asks them to take an action around it. Those would be the major ones. Of course, AI/ML, chatbots, robo advisors are coming in now for wealth management. Hyper personalization is the key. So whether it is personalization or hyper personalization, and it makes that distinction very clearly. She wants us to ensure that we don't talk personalization and hyper personalization in the same breath, because it's a massively different way and approach of implementation and that much more detail, the two of them, but both are equally good and necessary. And last but not the least, these days there's this NLP and LLM which is coming in. If you see a number of webinars that are going in today, 80% of them would be about the LLMs and the NLPs and the chat GPTs. But again, it need not be necessary unless there's a very specific use case that leverages it well and makes the investment count. But we have deep dived on it and the possible use cases around it as well. A lot of options, a lot of insights. But the game changer would be whether there's a problem that you have that can be solved using these technologies, rather than the other way around option where you look at the technologies and then figure out which problem to solve using them.
See, Ashutosh, thanks for that. But you didn't answer the second part of my question, whether are there returns on investments on customer experience? It will be good to touch upon that, Ashutosh.
100%. So sorry to have missed out. In fact, to add to what Annette mentioned in the earlier question, I see that there are three major challenges to an implementation. One of them is ROI, that, how do we visualize an ROI from an implementation and therefore, budget out or approve the specific investment going in. And beyond that, there are two others. One is, how do we get the functional buy-in from other stakeholders? For example, if you talk to a sales or a marketing leader and tell them we'll improve your CSAT and NPS by specific points, they'll be like, so what? Because for them, the KRA KPIs are very remarkably different. And unless you talk their language, there's a translation gap. And the third is a clarity on roadmap, very clear step-by-step approach to execution, which gives them a clarity on what's going to happen in the next 2 months, 6 months, 2 quarters, and so on, and when will we get the ROI back. And all these three are tied down together. While the report touches on that aspect, I would surely recommend the earlier white paper that you, me, and Annette we worked on, which is hyper personalization for wealth management sector, where we actually have given a very sound personalization framework and given a very clear approach to visualize or quantify an ROI from it. While it is specific to hyper personalization in wealth management, I believe anyone who reads it can immediately understand that what kind of an approach will help you articulate an ROI from any technology investment, because the approach and the steps towards it are pretty much common and can be leveraged for any other use case as well. So we have touched upon this aspect in the report, but I really recommend that people do look forward to the other white paper as well, which is hyper personalization in wealth management.
Thanks, Ashutosh. See, I have another related questions on what you just spoke about. Okay. You are essentially saying customer experience is moving from reactive to proactive, because that is what you're saying, that it is proactively giving certain piece of advice to the customers for taking certain actions. Second, you're also saying that there are platforms which have come in, which is promising for life cycle experience rather than few touch points. If you have looked at the earlier part of customer experience, have been on specific transactions or activities rather than on the full life cycle of the product or with the relationship with the bank. But you are now saying there are journey managers which have emerged and therefore they promise a full life cycle experience. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And just to add to that, there's another very sound platform option that's available, which is communities. If you look at it, there is this catch-22 of sorts, which is you would want to personalize an experience for the customer, but for that you would need a lot of data from the customer to understand the customer better and then personalize. Now there's a catch-22, whether the customer would be open to share the data with you and then for you to be able to leverage the data to personalize, right? And this is where, depending on the persona, the generation, there is a different appetite to share data and trust the platform with the data. But now there's an additional option coming in, which is brand communities or brand advocate communities, which is where a brand can actively recruit existing clients into a brand advocate community. Think of it like a Facebook for a brand, a captive proprietary private Facebook for a bank, where the customers can not only talk to each other and learn from each other how to best leverage the product or the solution or the brand, but at the same time, the brand can reach out to the customers and seek specific inputs about the journey, about the customer experience, about the product feedback and whatnot. And the best outcome from such a platform is that your response rates are 3x of the usual, 3x, 4x of the usual. The quality of input is way high. And you are addressing the data challenges. You're creating a community where customers are open, trust the platform to share the data and act on the data. So that's again another thing which is emerging with the increasing data security and other regulatory aspects that are coming in the industry, which we touched upon right at the start of the conversation.
Now, essentially, Ashutosh, you are saying that between that option that people had, either the bank holds the data or it is in the public domain, there is an extended part which is in the community where they could still hold and guarantee privacy. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And see, which is a win-win because the customers also interact with others to learn from, fully being aware that it is secure. Very nice. Now, turning to you, Annette, if you were to tell the CXOs of the banks, what would, in your view, will be some of the priorities that they could pick up from the report?
Well, I think Ashutosh covered a lot in his response to your last set of questions, but I think what the report really provides is a clear path forward, right? By using the insights that they find in the report, they can really be not just reactive, but really proactive in designing the customer experience. And I think that's so important. I think taking the time to understand the industry, understand the space, understand the technology, and first and foremost, understanding your customers is really going to help you going forward in terms of being way more proactive about designing the experience and designing the experience that your customers expect. So that's an important part of it. I think, being informed about what's important to customers in this industry today, along with the changes in the industry, the changes in their needs, is critical to success, and you'll find that in the report. And if it's not in the report, we talk about ways that you can get that information for yourself, and especially for your customers specifically. So having that deep understanding of your customers' needs, how others are addressing those needs, and changes with regards to the digital and technology, and all of that allows CXOs to look at their design work through a different lens, right? It gets them to think differently about what they're doing and how they could or should be doing it going forward. So I think that's really important. The top CX successes, and Ashutosh mentioned, highlighted a few of those. I think reading about those and what other brands are doing in the industry should really spark some ideas on how their successes can translate to your brand. You're not necessarily going to do the exact same thing, but I think it's that, that's thought-provoking content and the ideas that ought to be generated as a result of reading what some other brands are doing. And the interesting thing is that not just reading about what other brands in your industry are doing, but also, and this obviously isn't in the report, but looking outside of your industry too, to see what other brands are doing outside of the industry, because your customers' expectations are set in a variety of different ways, and about the Amazon effect. And so if you think about what that has done to customers and their expectations about how they want to interact with their banks too is just an important consideration. So some things to think about. So definitely some thought-provoking content that ought to be able to spark some ideas on how you'll be successful in designing and delivering a great customer experience. And then I think the tools and the technologies that are talked about in the report should also get your wheels spinning about what you're missing and what you need to add to your CX stack. And again, Ashutosh mentioned a few of those, and I think that those are really going to be critical things that that you need to take into consideration as you're designing your customer experience strategy.
See, essentially, Annette, do I read it that you're saying there are enough stories in the report which people can pick up and see what is relevant and what is more appropriate for them?
Yeah.
Second, there is also how to execute them is also available, both with regard to the framework which Ashutosh touched upon, as well as the technology stacks and tools that are available.
Absolutely, it's all there. I mean, it's
all. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Annette.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm just saying it's all there, right? I mean, there's a lot there. It's comprehensive, and any CXO is going to in this industry is going to learn a lot from it.
Thanks for that, Annette. Now, Ashutosh, did I get that last time you mentioned regulations are coming in, but you're saying regulations do not stand in the way of creating great experience? And how do people balance the new age versus current platform, as well as with regard to those regulations, and still go to execute a great customer experience?
Fantastic. That's a volley at the end, PV. So two parts to this, right? I'll touch the technology part first and then come to the politico-regulatory. If you look at all the successful implementations, and a lot of them we have quoted in the report as well, you would see that they build on the earlier stack and build on the merits and successes of the earlier stack. For example, if you have a sound CRM platform that gets and that tracks and stores the relationship or engagement data, if you have a sound CMS which stores the interaction data on your marketing channels, you have a sound marketing automation platform which tracks the channels which has the maximum success in terms of content dissemination, it's only then you can build a sound customer data platform, because then you have the right data to aggregate and then have a customer 360-degree view of sorts. It's only when you have a sound customer data platform with data coming in from all these sources is when you can analyze that data, build insights, and then act on it, by way of which you're paving the way for a good CXM platform. And if you have a good CXM platform which kind of co-creates alongside the customer, specific solutions, interventions, or personalizations, it is then you can actually have a good journey orchestration platform to kind of activate or execute these strategies in a structured workflow manner. So all of these are, acting on one layer above the other. So which means that any investment that you do today is if nothing else, is going to help you future-proof yourself anyways. Any other new tech or platform that comes in will build on top of the existing stack. So it's not that your investments will be redundant. So there will always be a definitive use for it. And all the new technologies as well that are coming in, for example, LLP, LLM, or a ChatGPT kind of a solution, which we are so actively talking about, it needs a sound base of a good, a chatbot or an interaction platform, or an email tracking platform where what content works with which kind of persona in which kind of channel, so that all the generative content that you will use and leverage from the ChatGPT can be directed and leveraged well. So one good thing about technologies is that it's a build-up, it's a layered transformation, and that's the right way as well. A lot of organizations I've seen fail when they try and preempt and deliver a Gen 3, Gen 4 solution without building the foundation. And I feel that would be the right recommendation or advice, that focus on the foundational pillars first. Very simply, CX is about continually listening. then generating insights, and then acting on it. So you have to build foundationally sound listening posts, insight engine, and then an action, bustle, so to say. And anything that helps you build that foundationally ground up will go a long way forward. It's a longish answer, but that's the reality of things, that the technology platform works in that ground up manner. Nothing can be built overnight. Although you have access to platforms, for the better implementations and efficient, effective implementations, you need the foundation in place. And that is the case in a way, with politico-regulatory aspects as well. Each of the regulations that have come about, you would see they have come about based on learnings from specific failures. You would see whether it is the DORA Act, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, or the Second Payment Services Directive in Europe, and any such directive or regulation that comes in, it is building up on certain gaps and failures that one sees in the industry, and to recommend and give structured interventions around better transparency, better trust on sustainability or impact-focused investments, and so on, which means now they're giving you an added focus or direction to the implementation, and also creating demand for the right platforms. The moment there's a surge or demand or necessity of a transparency or trust-based ecosystem, you would see an immediate demand for the relevant techs and platforms that deliver to that transparency and trust. So I would rather look at regulatory as directional posts, as things which are giving you direction into what is needed to make things better, and leverage the right technologies which cater to that. If you do it the right way, they'll only add to the CX overall. For example, if you build transparency and trust, it goes a long way in delivering best CX anyways. So again, it's a perspective rather than looking at regulatory and the political environment as a constraint. I could pretty much look at them as directional levers which I can use for good. And the earlier I act on it, the earlier I have a better differentiation and an edge in terms of compliance and go to market.
I would add to that. I would add to, with regards to the regulatory, I worked for Fidelity Investments years ago, and that was a big part of some of the complaints. The regulations and the compliance slows things down for customers, right? Slows things down internally as well. And I think the main thing here is that we just need to set expectations, right? We need to communicate. We need to educate our customers. And I think that communication and that messaging are some of the most overlooked things when it comes to the customer experience. And so I just think we can't forget, we get so into what we're doing internally and know that we've got these regulations and this compliance and everything, but we have to keep customers informed and continue to set expectations and help them understand the why behind it. Why is it taking so long? Why is there so much paperwork? Why is there this? Why is there that, right? Why am I still using fax machines? That's my favorite one. Well, there's compliance there. There's a reason for that. So, but again, it's really about that communication and setting the expectations up front, and that goes a long way towards goodwill for customers.
Annette, do you really think it's only a communication or some education also you will fold into that communication, Annette?
Absolutely. That was my notes here. It says education, setting expectations, communication. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. See, Ashutosh, you're questioning the conventional thinking. There are many people who thought that a better UI UX guarantees a customer experience, whereas you are saying there is new generation has come. Now you better create a platform to listen, record, and have the data with regard to your customer before you go on. And there are technologies available to do that, as well as to deliver to them a life cycle experience. Is that what you are saying?
100%. Because I fundamentally believe that CX is pivoted around brand promise, customer promise, that if you set that, and Anna touched upon it in the last response as well, if you set the right expectations and then deliver to that, you are making a better experience rather than, giving a better promise and not delivering to that. And a lot of times I've seen UX UI does that, you create a UX UI which enhances, the perception of a promise or an expectation, but then you cannot follow it through with the delivery, and then you falter in some way. Not that I'm discounting UX UI in some way, but I'm saying UX UI is a small aspect, a prominent, a critical aspect of CX, but a small aspect. The larger aspect is understanding what promise you have to deliver, what customers are perceiving it as in the market, and then delivering to that across all the touch points in the journey continually through the relationship.
I have just one other observation there, Ashutosh. Is this listening and data relevant more for proactive or even for reactive situations?
Fantastic. There are 4 P's I would call out for any experience, right? If a customer, and we are all customers, we have been customers, so we can easily relate to that. That's the best part of this wonderful space of CX, that it's easy to understand. I feel there are only four things that can happen, right? 1, I have a problem. 2, I have certain preferences. 3, I have within those preferences, I have specific priorities. And 4 is I have a wish list or a possibility that this should be delivered by the brand and so on. Beyond these 4, there can't be any other experience expectation as such, right? Problems, possibilities, priorities, preferences, which means that the listening post has to have an eye, an ear, all senses open on all the 4. When it comes to the problems, this is where you're reactive, that you figure out a problem, you react on it, you solve it, then have a continuous learning root cause analysis to figure out why it happened so that it doesn't happen again and fix it for good. But then for all the other 4, it's more proactive. You have an continued eye on what these could be, and start working towards this much in advance, and kind of cater to these latent, unexpressed inputs, so that you delight the customers eventually when you deliver it without being told.
Very good. Very, very good. See, Annette, I heard you mention, the raison d'etre of any business, especially banking, is their customer. That being the case, customer experience should have been the first priority. It is not something which they should have recognized now.
Yes.
Now, what would be your closing remark, Annette, given that?
Okay, so that got me thinking a lot of different ways there, right? So first of all, if your customer experience is going to be your first priority, then your employee experience has to be more first, and we're talking a lot about technology and tools and all of these kinds of things, right? Well, we've got to set employees up for success. We've got to prepare them. We've got to give them what they need to be able to design and deliver a great experience for the customer. So I think that's really important. So definitely one of the closing remarks that I want to add. The other part is, yes, without customers, you have no business, right? What are you doing this for? And so building a customer-centric organization, putting customer experience top of mind, having investments and making changes and making improvements and doing all these things to make sure that the customers come back again, that should be a no-brainer, right? That really should just be a no-brainer. Unfortunately, it's not. I think a lot of companies and a lot of leaders are still focused on money and metrics first, and then the rest of it later. And it's really the other way around. Focus on the people and the numbers will come, right? Whatever your numbers are, whether the metrics or the financial or whatever. So I think that's really the point that I'll leave it on, is focus on the people and the numbers will come.
Thanks so much for that. Annette, essentially you're saying that the cultural part can be handled through better employee experience.
Well, actually, the culture is the precursor for the employee experience. So culture is the foundation, and then the employee experience is built on top of that. So
built on top of that to further accentuate or reinforce, and therefore then you would naturally have this in place.
Yep.
Thanks so much, both of you, for having been in this session. It has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, PV. Thanks, Annette.